to please start taking your seats. And if we can call our colleagues from outside, Uchang. We will try to call our colleagues from outside to join us. So let me start by asking our speakers for this session to please join me here at the podium. Our afternoon speakers. I know everybody had lunch and everybody is ready to maybe go home, but we are still having a couple of hours here. So you guys are stuck with us for the coming 2 hours, and I promise you it's going to be informative and interesting sessions. So I'd like all the speakers for this afternoon session to join me here at the podium, please. So we have, hey, yeah, are you okay? Yeah, that's fine. Sanjay, can you join us here, please? Enrico is here. Bakodir. Are you? And Mr. Jamal. Bala from Nigeria. And Jose, are you joining us? Okay, so let's get started. We have here quite some presentations. Ms. Abir Swidat Al-Harbi from Kuwait and Rawia from Iraq, they already delivered their presentation in the previous session, so we are short on one speaker. But we have here an esteemed panel and presenters, so I would like to ask all the presenters to please try to stick to the time allocated. I think we are going to have around 10 minutes per speaker because we have a lot of speakers in this session. So we will try to do 10 minutes for each speaker. Then I'm going to be asking the floor for maybe a question or two based on time. And then we are going to have some concluding remarks and maybe open the floor for discussion towards the end of our session. So let me start by Mr. Kikan Koo from Korea. And he is going to give us some opening remarks. You can use that if you want to. This is working. Should work. It's up to you.
Okay, you can hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Okay. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen.
Hello.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. It is my great pleasure to be here today and meet members of the national delegate and experts on sand and dust storm from all around the world. My name is Kyun Go, Director General of the International Affairs in Korea Forest Service. Today's issue on sand and dust storm. Nowadays, this sand and dust storm pose a great threat to people's health and their livelihood. It severely deteriorates the quality of the atmosphere in many countries, including Republic of Korea, the occurrence of the dust and the sandstorm has a significant effect on the increase of concentration of fine dust and ultrafine dust in Korea. Its impact has been very visible in the Korean Peninsula. In Korea, the general public has been suffering from the high level of accumulation of fine dust and ultrafine dust every spring. In 2017, the number of fine dust alarming days reached the 16 days. This is above the average numbers in normal years compared to the normal years. We often witness cases in which this compromised air quality no longer affects a single individual, but take on a national, regional, and global scales. First of all, to reduce the occurrence of the fine dust, the Korean government has recently implemented various policies in order to reduce the use of fossil fuels, which are the source of the fine dust. The old coal-fired electric power plant were closed, and measures were taken to stop the operation of the diesel-fired cars after the certain period of time. Early this year, the Korean government even launched the presidential committees to address these fine dust issues at the national policy level. The former UN Secretary General, Mr. Ban Ki-moon, now is in charge of these committees as a chairperson. We at the Korea Forest Service also has been expanding the urban green space with a significant scale of investment increase of financial resources and technical resources. I would like to stress that this transnational cooperation will be required to successfully address with this pressing environmental concern, because DSS and the fine dust issues easily cross the national boundary in many cases. I would like to note that countries throughout the world are doing their due part to take necessary measures against the yellow dust and the sandstorm. But during today's session, I would like to take your attention to a successful case of joint cooperation happening in Northeast Asia. In Northeast Asia, China, Mongolia, and South Korea have established the desertification, land degradation, and the drought in Northeast Asian network, or DLDD-NEAN, since 2012 for a joint cooperation. These three countries has been holding a steering committee meeting on an annual basis to implement various activities as well as cooperation projects. As part of this joint cooperation project, the multilateral joint research on combating desertification and the Jaminud project in Mongolia were implemented, while more recent cooperation activities include writing up the Global Land Outlook report in Northeast Asia region. This effort paid off with the fruitful publication of the report at COP14 here in India. Since 2012, the Korean government has been supporting the implementation of the UNCCD LDN with the Changwon initiative, not to mention the lending active support to the various yellow dust storm projects. Accordingly, we have been paying close attention to yellow dust storm-related policies. Not only that, the Korean government has been making active contribution to drafting a global sand and dust storm source-based map. Korea's interest in combating desertification and the yellow and the dust storm will only grow, ensuring continued support in this field. Congratulating on the today's launch of the SDS coalition today, I kindly wish this coalition to get more global attention, to collect more political will and mobilize the resources to address these global issues. In this context, I hope the international communities may use the international gatherings relevant to these land issues in the future. For instance, Korea plans to host the world event, including the World Forest Congress in 2021 in Seoul. Before this Congress, also Korea Forest Service expressed its wishes to host the Global Day, World Day, to combat desertification with the UNCCD Secretariat next year. Those two events, international events, will be great chance to highlight these issues at the global scale. As a host country of the World Forest Congress, the Korea Forest Service may consider these dust and sandstorm issues as one of the main subjects for the Congress. I have prepared the promotional material for the brief introduction on this World Forest Congress. While you are attending and after this meeting, you get the promotion material with you to home. This session will serve as an excellent occasion to put our ideas and proposal together in searching for an effective solution against the dust and the sandstorm. It is my honest hope that experts' various presentation on successful exemplary cases today can not only teach us valuable lessons, but also facilitate our discussion further on some of the possible ways to reinforce cooperation among concerned countries and the stakeholders. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ko, for your opening remarks. It's quite impressive to see that Korea is already at the government level is interested and is able to observe the importance and the need for such a coalition. I would like to open the floor for any quick question. We have a few minutes. If there is any point or comment that needs to be made. If not for now, that's fine. We are going to open the discussion towards the end of the session. Let me ask Mr. Sanjay from UNCCD to tell us a little bit about SDS vulnerability assessment and mapping. So he was very kind with me in the morning session, and he gave me enough time.
No.
So I'm not sure what I'm going to do.
I will not take much of time. This is just to show you what could be the impact of transboundary dust and sandstorm. So can I have my slide? Normally, as we discussed, the impact of disaster like earthquake, you will see how many buildings are damaged and what is their impact on the infrastructure. So it's easy to quantify the damage and losses due to the extreme disaster. But in case of dust and sandstorm, where there is no visible impact are all indirect, is very difficult to quantify. And also if the impact are transboundary in nature, then it becomes even more difficult to quantify. In this presentation, what we have done is we have made efforts, thank you. Yeah. We have made efforts to quantify on a real-time sand and dust storm event, which impacted 4 countries together. So the good part is we made use of UNCCD framework of vulnerability and risk assessment. I think my friend Ochang is not here. But this is the UNCCD framework, and that framework was used to capture the dust and sandstorm impact. But what is more important, which I think the UN coalition is trying to promote, is the data and information, particularly the data of transboundary nature. So here, this is one example of data available, particularly of transboundary nature. You see, these are the data science era. You have seen many of the presentation on science. The data are mostly available in the public domain. But there are data which you can make use to make all kind of assessment. Here, the hazard data of dust and sandstorm available from the satellite images. You saw a presentation this morning. But what is more important is the exposure database in dust and sandstorm area. What is the infrastructure, particularly the renewable infrastructure, solar, wind? What are the transport infrastructure which are likely to be impacted? Road, airport, port, ICT infrastructure, exposed population, exposed economic stock. So these are the very, very key databases which are made use for dust and sandstorm impact assessment. But what I would like to bring to your attention, in last year, this year in fact, UN agencies, UNDP and UN OCHA, they brought out Human Development Index data. It's a gridded data set. It's a all digital data domain. So you have gridded HDI data sets. So all put together, health infrastructure, gridded data, you can make assessment of this type of impact. So the case study which I would like to present to you is a dust and sandstorm, which in the morning have been talked about, impacted Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, Iran, and downline to the India. What was the impact? From visual, you can just see a storm impacting many countries. But then what is the economic impact? We made efforts to quantify the economic impact. This is the hazard data, and the hazard data we captured for 14 May and 28 May. This is captured from the MODIS images, real-time data available. But then when you intersect hazard data on population, you know how many people are impacted by dust and sandstorm. You see on 14th May, the impact is quite large, even larger part of western part of India, Pakistan, Iran, and then Turkmenistan, a large cross sections of the people. On 28, it is mostly Central Asia and Iran, that part of the belt. So if you have a database with you, the population gridded information, you will know who are the people, how many are the people impacted by one wave of dust and sandstorm. But what is more important is the vulnerable population. This is what you got from the gridded data set of UNDESA. The people who are the poor with low human development index, to what extent those people who have no coping capacity to withstand this kind of disaster, how many those people were impacted. So you got the vulnerability of the people. Now you see the health sector. This is a very important because you have seen dust and sandstorm linked directly with health. So the health infrastructure in Pakistan, in Iran, and this side, you will able to know what are those health infrastructure impacted. So then it comes to economic stock. This is most important because any funding to dust and sandstorm, when you approach any donors or even the government, that we need this much budget to support the mitigation of dust and sandstorm. One question we always come across when we discuss with donor, bring an economic case. How much is the economic impact of that particular disaster? So when you see the economic stock, this is the first time a gridded data set was published by Global Assessment Report of Disaster, DRR. And this data, we use the economic stock. And then you see the total economic stock which were impacted by dust and sandstorm 2 events. This is one sector, like energy sectors, renewable energy sector. You see how many renewable energy sectors, solar plant, wind plants, all overlaid on dust and sandstorm. And then you see how much is the ICT infrastructure, the road infrastructure, because these are the road where visibility becomes very important in dust and sandstorm. You see the impact on road infrastructure, impact on airport. In Iraq, you saw how many days airport were impacted. So these are very clear impact assessment on critical infrastructure. And then come to the port, because this is yet another critical infrastructure heavily impacted by sand and dust storm. Then ICT infrastructure, to what extent those are impacted by dust and sandstorm. Now you put all this impact together. You make an economic case, because all those infrastructure which were impacted by dust and sandstorm is not a loss. So you have to quantify, you have to give an economic factor, and then quantify how much is the damage and loss due to dust and sandstorm. Because how much, for example, if you come to 14 May, the population, the hospitals, economic stocks, solar energy, and all critical infrastructures. So this is the extent of the damage. When you come to 28 May, this is the extent of the damage. When we did economics, because I'm coming from Economic Commission, we talk mostly in economics language. So this damage was to the extent of $2 billion in 4 countries together. So this is a huge impact of just 1-2 days event. This event is going to continue in the future. This is an analysis of latest IPCC report. And when you see latest IPCC report, particularly the South Asia, Southwest Asia, Central Asia, the all parameters of dust and key drivers of sand and dust storms are on the rising side. So this is going to be much more severe in coming days. So this is just to bring to your attention the economic impact which could be due to the dust and sandstorm. There are very few case studies where you will see the economic impact of dust and sandstorm in the multiple sectors, also the vulnerability, the population, and so on sectors. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Sanjay, for quite interesting presentation. Do we have any questions from the floor? Any comments? Yes, please, go ahead. The mic is right.
My name is BKP Sinha. I am from Amity University.
Can you speak?
My name is BKP Sinha. I am from Amity University, Noida. As we all know that the impact of this dust storms, etc., the only effective remedy is the vegetative cover. And in case of vegetative cover, in case of climate change, when the temperature is going to rise above the normal, then in that situation there is a necessity of knowing what are the species which are resistant to extreme climates of high temperature or droughts, what are the species which cannot tolerate. So there is a need for having an experiments across the globe where such type of storms occur, so that we can exchange the data and know that what is happening to the biomass there, whether the biomass is increasing or decreasing, number one. Number two, what is happening to the species, how they are performing. So these type of researches throughout the globe, there should be in exchange of research data throughout the globe, and we should have experimental plots throughout the globes for synthesizing such type of data. Thank you.
Thank you. Sanjay, do you want to?
I think
You can speak up. Speak up in the mic. It's working.
Yeah,
just speak two words.
I'm sorry I'm not able to answer this question. My background is more from the economic perspective of dust and sandstorm. But there was a session on biodiversity, for dust and sandstorm, and there are many discussions on those lines.
Yeah, the point is well taken. Like our colleague here was talking about the fact that in order to overcome the impacts of dust storms, you need to increase the vegetation cover, which might come to be a challenge because of the changing climate. So we should be looking into more of a global experiments where we can look for more tolerant kind of vegetation, which can, can withstand higher temperatures, drier climates. Thanks for the comment.